and we'll be back later in January for actual voting sessions.
It's probably good that it works this way because those first few days probably not a lot of work would get done because everybody's getting familiar with their surroundings. You're going to be welcoming a whole new group of people in.
You absolutely do, and it is good for those new people to have a little bit of time to get acclimated, to understand, the ins and outs of the Capitol. It's a huge building, a connection of buildings, so a lot of times you even need a map to get around the Capitol complex in Harrisburg. But it does give those new members time to first of all, appreciate the fact that they won an election, that they are, serving in a historical way to help the people of Pennsylvania. Gives them a chance to celebrate with their family and friends, and then it gives all of us a chance to get ourselves reorganized, to continue to work on our legislation, and myself in the new leadership position gives us time to plot a course for the Republican caucus over the next 2 years.
As the seniority changes and offices get reorganized as well, a lot of people who have been in one place in the Capitol, their office, they move. Are you moving this year?
Well, I did with my election to leadership as the Appropriations Chairman. I am now in the Appropriations Office, which is just outside of the House floor. So I have a large staff of budget analysts that will work as the governor gives his budget address in early February to analyze what he's proposing, analyzing his spending, hopefully not too much of an increase in spending, and look at how those dollars will be used by the various administrative agencies, how they will help Pennsylvania residents, obviously looking to maintain some fiscal responsibility with taxpayer dollars. But yes, I have moved pretty much in early December from my existing office on the East Wing that I've had for the past 6 years and into the Appropriations Office. It's very exciting.
I'm sure as well that you have had to do a bunch of studying here since the election and since you're having been appointed, because there's an awful lot of knowledge that you have to have just going into the process that maybe you weren't privy to before.
Well, absolutely, Todd. You're right. And even though I served on the Appropriations Committee as a member for the past 6 years, it's very different when you're in the chairman's position, because I spent a lot more time in Harrisburg this December than I have previously. Working with my staff, I had to hire some new people, a new executive director, a new chief operating officer to manage the committee. You learn the behind the scenes of what happens, day to day in Harrisburg with the budget, what occurs, the various meetings that occur, working with the administration. It opens a whole new doorway. It opens a whole new view of how things happen. But it also is very exciting to me because I see where we can make a difference standing united with the Senate Republicans as House Republicans, working on the budget together and working as a force for good for Pennsylvania. So to me, it's very exciting. I see where we can make changes, where we have made improvements already, and I'm really, really looking forward to the next 2 years.
It sounds like a very exciting proposition to be able to see, these are where these dollars go, and here comes the revenue stream coming in. And the more clarity you have on all of those, those issues, the better your understanding becomes, and therefore the better decisions can be made.
Well, and I think one of the key things that I want to do as the Appropriations Chairman is help my committee and my caucus understand more how the agencies under the governor operate. Why do they need these dollars? How are they using these dollars? Are they using these dollars in the most efficient manner? Are there ways that we could cut some red tape? Are there ways where we could, reduce costs instead of just coming to us every year asking for an increase? So there are better ways to be more efficient, more responsible with taxpayer dollars. So I'm excited to have that behind-the-scenes view as well. And I'm hopeful that the governor and his administration have learned some lessons over the past couple of years, going into this third year of budget for his administration, that they will come in with a more reasonable ask. The past couple of years, $3 billion increase is a lot. And if you look at our budgets over the past 10 years, they've increased dramatically, billions and billions of dollars every year, at a time when we know that those revenues are going to decline. Expected to be a decrease in revenues of $3 billion, almost $4 billion over the next year.
One of the biggest topics of conversation when you talk state budget always is university funding.
Yes.
And particularly state system, because those are the universities that are technically owned by the state. And you've been involved in those discussions for a long time. The General Assembly has really made a huge investment the last couple of budgets in the state system of higher education. As you will be analyzing those numbers more and more, are you satisfied going into this process that they've spent the money wisely and that the investment's been worth it?
Well, I truly thought that Chancellor Greenstein did a great job with the PASHE system over the past 7 or 8 years that he was chancellor. Now he has left, and there's a new interim chancellor right now as they look for a permanent replacement. I think they have turned the ship. I know that they had a lot of work to do with the restructuring of some of those universities, scaling back on some of the programs, and I know it wasn't hard or wasn't easy. It was very hard, particularly here in communities like Indiana where we have a PASHE school and IUP. But I think they have done the hard work that was asked of them. They have looked at their processes and their their costs and their overhead and tried to make the changes that needed to occur to make sure that they were being more solvent, that they weren't continuing to leak money into some of those universities that simply weren't making ends meet. Mm-hmm. And so I think they have done what we have asked of them to do. I know that they're going to come in again this budget cycle with another increase, but they've also promised again to hold tuition rates, which I think is very important at a time when we're trying to grow the student population in the PASHE system.
You and Senator Pittman both have talked in the past about how some of the universities that aren't pulling their own weight have been reaching their fingers into IUP's pocketbook and Westchester's pocketbook, some of the universities that seem to be doing better financially, and that impacts their bottom line in a very, very negative way. Are we making progress there?
We are. I think a lot of people don't realize that there's one checkbook for the entire PASHE system. So where one school is struggling, the other schools have to carry that burden, and that had been happening for many years within the PASHE system, which is why the realignment was so important. And I think they have done that work. They have helped these schools. We did a lot helping them last budget cycle with some of the debt reduction, and I think that this time around, again, we have to see what the governor proposes, where he's going to ask for other increases, but we obviously want to be very supportive of the state system, which, as you said, is the higher education system that Pennsylvania actually owns.
Beyond the budget talks, which will be getting underway, let's talk about other legislative priorities for you in 2025. What are some of the things you'd like to see happen?
Well, I think one of the key things is we have to get a better handle on our energy policy. The governor continues to talk about the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative and the other proposals that he's put forth just for Pennsylvania at a time when we know energy production is so vitally important. We continue to see jobs leaving, particularly Western Pennsylvania, going to Ohio and West Virginia in our building trades, and we have to turn that tide around, because I think that will help solve a lot of our financial problems as well, because we can see an increase in revenues if we can see an increase in energy production here in Pennsylvania. So I think that's one of the key policy drivers that we have to look at. I think we also have to look at, the human services needs that are out there are vast. Reimbursement rates for long-term care workers, for home health workers. Last cycle, we were able to help the service providers for the disabilities community with an increase. I know that's going to be another ask, but again, we have to see where the governor comes in with some balancing issues. So there's a heavy lift in front of us on many fronts: the public transportation, transportation infrastructure, law enforcement. All of those things come into play. But again, we have to look at where we are physically and where we need to be over the next 2 years so that we don't continue to draw down our reserve funds.
State Representative Jim Struzzi with us this morning. Beyond your leadership role, you obviously are very interested in pieces of legislation.
Yes.
And you had a bunch of them in 2024, 2023 as well. Things that you'd like to see happen legislatively. I'm sure that you'll be reintroducing a bunch of those because it's a new session. I think people might need to understand that when a new session starts, all that old stuff goes away. You got to reintroduce.
That is one of the challenges, Todd. The whole cycle starts all over again, from introduction to getting it through a committee, getting it through the amendment process to a floor vote through the Senate with the same process in play. I've introduced, or I will be introducing, a number of those bills again. We have the co-sponsor memos out there. A lot of them people have been familiar with because I've been trying to get these pieces of legislation over the finish line for several years. And most of those will be reintroduced, hopefully with a more of a bipartisan approach to moving legislation this session. We can get some of those important bills done.
Do you have to remodel any of them?
You do, and I think that's part of the process that is good, because oftentimes you'll come up with an idea, and as you go through the process, get stakeholder input, get input from people who will be affected by the legislation, you tend to tweak it, you tend to change it and make it better so that it is more acceptable, and perhaps it avoids any unintended consequences like you see happen with a lot of legislation that truly isn't vetted through the process.
Your New Year's wish list, what are 2 or 3 of the top things that you'd like to see passed legislatively?
Well, again, I think energy policy is going to be of the utmost importance to us. I'd like to see more focus on mental health and resources for the mental health community. I think we have to take a good look at medical providers in the insurance industry because we see a lot of challenges with that right now. People are struggling to pay their bills and their medical bills. And I think a lot of that's due to some of the structuring of how insurance companies actually work and what they're willing to pay for. So I think there's a lot of legislative and policy issues that we have to address. But again, I think we need to do it collectively and make sure that we're doing it to the benefit of all Pennsylvanians.
And a new General Assembly means that for the next 2 years, the Republican Party, of which you are a member, is going to be in the minority in the House.
Yes.
And that changes the perspective and the things that you can do as well.
And that's why I think it's so vitally important. And we have a new leader in the Republican caucus, a new appropriations chair in the Republican caucus, plus 2 other new members on our leadership team. And our perspective is going to be one of working together with Senate Republicans, working with Senate Majority Leader Pittman, who, as you know, is right here in town with me, so Joe and I get along very well. But I think it's important that we work together with them, that we share our common goals from a Republican standpoint to help Pennsylvania, because I think we need to show people that we're united, working together to try and make lives better for everyone.
He is State Representative Jim Struzzi, off to Harrisburg on Tuesday for swearing in, and then the hard work gets underway in the state capitol. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you,
Good luck
Todd.
in 2020.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS, 101.1 FM, AM 1160, and WCCSradio.com. Fox News coming up next at the top of the hour. We're a minute and a half away from that. Josh Whittison in our WCCS newsroom. And then Doug Steve joins us. It's time to start thinking about the Indiana County Sports Hall of Fame. And I'm not in it again.
Hello, this is John Lefdahl, owner and director of the John A. Lefdahl Funeral Home. A visitation provides loved ones with the time to heal, the time to share memories, and the comfort to know that it is okay to grieve a loss, all